Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the power of longing. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about us and how you can practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we will do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other in this podcast.
Mm-hmm. So I noticed that every time I hear you speak now, Steph, I want to wiggle. But we wiggled a lot. But if you want to use wiggling as your self-connection practice, you can. But I will walk us through one that I think connects us to this topic, actually. And so I think it's going to be a two-part practice. And the first part is, it's neat, actually. I love walking us through this because you don't know what I'm doing either. And so Steph is experiencing it for the first time, too. So let's just feel what you're sitting on or standing on or laying on. Let's just bring some presence to that. And when I do that, I tend to I think it's conditioned in now, but at first I had to be intentional about it. It's bringing some awareness to your breath. And then what we'll do is, if you'd like to, you can place a hand somewhere on your body that feels comforting. And bring to mind something in your life right now that you appreciate, that feels good. And just notice how that feels to bring some awareness to something or someone that you appreciate. It feels good to think about it or think about them. Or something you feel some gratitude towards. And then let's connect with this motion, which is like a gathering in. So it's reaching out into whatever direction you want to, and then bringing inward and letting it land on your body somewhere where it feels good. And so here we're just doing the motion, but if you'd like, connect it with something you desire, something you long for. Whether it's, I long for a nap later, or a lovely dessert, or, whatever, really. Could be a way you long to feel, someone you long to see. Right, we're just tapping into longing and desire. I'm longing for my head and neck to feel good. That's my longing. And just notice how that was to bring a little bit of awareness to what you already have that you feel grateful for, and also something that you would like, an experience you would like, or a feeling you would like. Longing and desire. What is it like to hold both? The thing that I love these practices because I also surprise myself. I don't know what the thing is that I'm going to long for or appreciate. And right after I suggested the prompt of, see if you can connect to something you're appreciating, I looked over and I see this plant on my desk. And it's like shooting up 2 new thingies, whatever you call those. And in a spot where I wouldn't have expected it. And it was a moment of delight and appreciation of, oh, it's growing. That's nice.
Isn't it? New leaves on plants is a very exciting thing. Yes.
It is.
Wow, buddy. longing is exciting to me suddenly.
There's so much to ask you already just in that sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And it's like very physical sensation differences. So I'll give a bit of like the background of how this came up for me. Our friend Jordan Gray, who is like a sex, love, relationship, and money coach, author of many books, writes. And he sent out this newsletter talking about longing for things. And there was some way, like this wasn't necessarily new information, but something about the way he phrased it. And the sentence was something like, let yourself long for the thing. And it hit me that I had cut out longing. I've been on a longing sabbatical since I was probably 14 and started like yearning for love and unrequited love pains and whatever. And I just stopped anything that I didn't have control over getting, doing, making. I just like deadened whatever that sensation was. And I realized as I read his words and this occurred to me that that's because at the time I didn't have the tools I needed to deal with the emotions and the sensations. And now I do. And I became suddenly excited to long for something. And I wrote him back. I'm like, thank you for this. I'm going to go actively seek out things to long for.
Amazing.
Right? It's exciting. And so now, like the practice that we just did, what I noticed in my body, this excitement feeling, like it reminds me of when I discovered that the sensations I experienced when I felt anxious were the same ones as when I felt excited. It's just my mental story was different. So with longing, like what I used to think of as sort of more of a yearning for something I can't have.
Yes.
Felt like this big, hollow, empty chest that filled me with like the desire to cry. And now it's like the same sensations, but with an excited vibe. And the wanting to cry feeling is the same feeling I get when something is so lovely that I want to cry.
I love it. Yeah. Yes. So you just shared a little bit about your history with the experience of longing. And I get that so much. I relate to that. And I was wondering, is it helpful if I share my little history with longing?
I would love to hear.
Okay. So when Steph suggested that we talk about longing, like immediately I knew it was a yes. And I have such a story, such an experience, like a body lived experience, mind experience, identity experience with longing that I didn't really make connection to until probably the last 5 years, maybe. And what I realized is this is sad and funny and all the things excellent all at once. I know longing, like to my bones, to my core, to like every tiniest cell. Like when I look back at childhood and young adulthood and just life, I know longing, but from the place of sadness, right? When you said yearning for something I can't have. And I actually have a mixed relationship with longing, and I'll share more about that. I definitely knew how to long for unrequited love and emotionally unavailable love, and longing for unconditional love. Like that could be like the book of my life. Like I know that feeling so well. And the history of it is I feel like I saw my mom as my interpretation of always longing for a different education that she would have had, a different career path, maybe a different relationship, a different life situation. And it was always paired with sadness and paired with this assumption and self-belief of I have no agency and power. This is just my fate and I have to live with it. And so longing to me was sort of a yucky feeling and so normal that I didn't know I was longing. I don't know if that makes any sense. It was just my way of being, my way of feeling. And then one day when it clicked, I'm like, oh, all those decades, it was longing for something I could never have, the disappointment of it, the it's never going to change belief about it. It was just gross. And then I also realized, so in one way, I was very familiar with longing, but in another way, I was completely like you cut off from longing. Like I wouldn't long for like the biggest way of self-expression or the career that felt most aligned or the education that felt most aligned or, like what I mean by that is I wouldn't dream big. I would sort of dream and aim towards like something that was a few steps ahead from where I was, but always deep down, I knew I can make that happen. Like that's within my realm of self-belief. And so I knew that I would never have to be disappointed, because that was the other thing that terrified me, is the possibility of feeling disappointed that this thing that I'm longing for and dreaming of is never going to happen. I already knew that to my core in this other area of my life. And I saw then how it impacted what I hoped and dreamed for myself and what I thought was possible. And so that is my old relationship with longing.
Eek. And what's your new relationship with longing?
I love it. I love it. But I think it's because it changed over time. Like you said, you built up certain skills and capacities so that now you can be with the fuller experience of longing, right? So I feel like in order to, and this is going to be such random thoughts, in order to tap into on a body-mind level of longing in a way that's healthy for us, I think we, one, need to know how to deal with and be with the sensations and emotion of disappointment. We have to know how to receive love and support along the way when the thing we long for hasn't materialized yet. We might need to be able to bring people on board to like ride along with our excitement, right? And share in that excitement and that aligned vision. I think what's helped me get to this place with loving longing is appreciation for what I have and what's great in my life, not just intellectually, but on a body level. Like I know how good it feels to look at that plant and see the sprouts. Like it feels like I get an inside feeling from that. And because of that, like that lifts me up. And the danger, I think, of not being able to connect in with present moment awareness and what is good or decent in the present moment, and then only tapping into longing, is you feel like you're oriented to this future hope of thing that hopefully will happen, but who knows, might not, but have nothing sort of sturdy to be in, land on, enjoy in the meantime, and to build my capacity to orient towards the thing I want to, work towards and that I long for and desire. So I think it can get very skewed if you don't have a present moment anchor to just be in longing, whether it's longing in my old way of longing that makes me feel sad, or even longing in a, more constructive way, in a longing that makes me feel excited. But I want to be able to do the dance of, I feel deep gratitude and presence for all the things that already exist that feel good. And I know how to feel them and enjoy them in my body. And in addition to that, I want to grow my muscle to connect to desire and feel the excitement of desire and longing in my body. And then add on, I believe myself to be someone capable of taking the aligned action to make my longings and desires come true, or more likely to come true. Right. So for me, like, it's all of those pieces.
Totally. I think there was a massive mindset shift in there for me, because part of what you're talking about is reminding me of, it making me think about manifestation, where you're trying to embody the energy of the thing you want, and not the negative aspect of not yet having the thing that you want, right? So in the past, like, I'll give an example. And okay, wait, I want to put a pin in here also about story about noticing what your mind does when the shutdown is happening. So the first instance, I think later that day after Jordan's newsletter, I was like, okay, I'm going to practice longing, right? And I was doing the dishes, and Kara and Jake were over. And I don't know if I told you, I'm writing a cheesy Christmas Hallmark screenplay.
I didn't know you were writing one. I thought you were editing one for someone. Now you're writing one?
That kind of fell off. And now, so I'm writing my own. It's almost.
Are you going to write my thing? Are you going to write my thing? Can that be one
write
too?
your thing. I will absolutely write your thing. Yeah. So she was reading the first few pages of it, and I was doing the dishes, and I noticed this like subtle holding pattern in my body. And I realized I was waiting for her feedback, and I realized I was shut down just like quite microscopically, just like clamped down on caring about what that feedback is. And then I realized I was like, oh, no. I'm going to long for her feedback to be that this is the most amazing thing she's ever read. Right. So then I like actively practiced that. And I've been doing this over the course of the week. And I've been coupling in my mind and body sensations that I used to experience constantly unconsciously, that shutdown, whatever subtle forms that takes in my body, and then trying to look at it through a longing lens. So last night, and this is a big one, I was watching The Ultimatum. Are you familiar with this? Yeah.
I'm familiar with that series, or that whatever it's called, but I have not watched the most recent one.
Reality love show, for those who don't know. Yes. And a man just put his hand on the small of the girl's back that he's dating. And I was like, oh, and my heart clamped down, and I could feel a hand on my back. And I was like, oh, I want that. I miss that. Big cave in my chest. And then I was like, wait a minute, longing. All that is something that I long for, that I trust will come in perfect time. And then the whole sensation switched to just enjoying the imagining a hand on my back and how wonderful love feels. And then it was just a nice experience.
Yes. And when you allow yourself to switch tracks, I want to call it that, you get that good feeling of like, oh, imagine when that happens again. Like that will feel so nice. And a byproduct of that, I think, is all of a sudden, like maybe not a total 180 or whatever, but all of a sudden, like a piece of armor falls away. The heart softens and opens and orients to, oh, maybe I would like to be in a relationship again one day. Maybe I look at people differently on the street because now I'm connected to that desire and that longing.
Yes. And that's the piece of manifestation that I wanted to mention, because we know these rules, right? Law of attraction and all this stuff, which is inexplicably just true. And in the past, if I was wanting to manifest some kind of love, like the energy that I was feeling was actually a rejection. It was like, oh, I miss having a hand on my back because I don't have a hand on my back, instead of sitting in the feeling of enjoying having a hand on my back.
Yeah. I love it.
Feels good.
Because if you're sitting in that cave, like hunched over feeling of, ugh, I don't have the thing I want. And I think what's important to make clear is we're not making that wrong. Like sometimes we do feel that, but it's about choosing how long do I want to be in that the energetics of that. And would it be more better feeling and more constructive for you to practice shifting into, when I don't have that thing, what is it showing me I have a longing and desire for? And what would it feel like to live in the energy of that? Right? Yeah. The imagining that is present in your life. How would that feel? And it makes me super excited to hear you say this. And what did I want to add to this piece? I wanted to circle back to you saying you were doing dishes and Kara and Jake were present and the Hallmark screenplay. And you said you felt something like clamped down. Was that like you were aware enough that you wanted like her positive feedback, but then just shut that down as like, oh, maybe I don't, or, oh, I don't want to think about that, or what was the shutdown experience?
I wasn't even thinking of the feedback. It was this like robotic doing of dishes, waiting. So the thing that was happening was Kara was reading the screenplay. While that was happening, I was busying myself doing dishes. So it was this whole like distract.
Right. It was a busying yourself and distraction. It wasn't I'm doing the dishes and she's reading the thing. Like the energetics wasn't like just flowing energy. It was like, I need to distract myself and not feel the things while she's reading the thing. Okay, I get it.
And it wasn't even that conscious. It was just like, oh, she's reading the thing. I will do the dishes.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Instead of this, if I pause for a moment, I could actually have a very different feeling experience right now, because what's also true is there's a longing for her feedback.
Yeah. If I was a child, more than I am currently, I would have just sat there at her feet and been like, what are you reading now? What do you think? Yeah. You know?
I love it. I love that you say it this way, because immediately when you said, if I were a child, and I'm going to add, if I were a child that had not been conditioned out of that behavior, right? If we were in our natural way of being, that's exactly what that feeling would be, because children naturally have that excitement. Like, what's going on? What's this? What do you think of this? Right? Do you like it? What, like, yes. Yeah. I love it.
And I want to stress that this is the result of years of feeling my feet on the ground and my bum on the chair, and of being open and desiring a mental framework that feels good and easeful for me. Like anyone can do this.
Anyone can do this. And like, I always say, I wish we could have before and after videos of people when they do this work, because it's not just about speaking about what's changed. It's the energy of someone, how their eyes light up. It's such a difference, right? And the reason why I say this is I bring myself back to when I met you, and you had already been doing, you know, different versions of work. But if I look back, I can definitely see someone who would not have had this energy around longing at all. This energy or framework or way of thinking. Even when you said, I wanted to have a framework, a way of sort of being in life that feels good and not fake. Like that's one thing I know for certain about you is you don't like fake. All right. So it's not like you want to be in some la la land. All right. But also, what I heard you say is like, I made a choice for myself in my life that I want to adopt and create different ways of thinking and seeing myself in the world that feel better and are true.
Yes.
Right. And that connects me to something you said earlier, which is, I don't know the exact words, but basically you said, I decided to practice. I decided to practice longing. And I hope when you're listening, you really take this away in that all these things we talk about are things we can all practice, and they make a huge difference in our lives. And you need to actively make that decision, that choice. I'm going to practice. It doesn't have to be super hard, doesn't have to be all the time, but there does have to be that intention of, I'm going to practice this thing that really doesn't feel natural for me yet. And I get the sense that it could open up something totally different for me in my life if I were to grow that muscle.
Yeah, totally. And to add to that, I reject a lot of tools that could be helpful and don't feel good to me, because I'm convinced that things can be easy and true feeling and flowful. So I will continue seeking until I find that thing. So I don't want people listening to go, oh, I heard that I could do this, therefore I should do that. Like trust your body, trust your instinct and your intuition about what the next step is. And maybe it's trying what you hear, but maybe it's moving on to the next thing and like letting that be okay too. There's no one way. Yeah.
I think I'd like us to do a separate episode on this that expands on this concept of when you said, just choose the next step. Right? The next step that brings you closer to how you want to live, how you want to feel, how you want to be in your life. It doesn't really matter what, just try something. right? It doesn't have to be what we suggest, but there's probably, if you were to be still and quiet with yourself, give yourself a little bit of time to connect to it, there's something either loud or quiet in you that says, it might be time to try this now, right? Or it might be time to at least be open to the idea of trying that one day. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. I'm just taking a break here, looking, what did I write down? Oh dear, yes. So I remember experiences where longing never led to the actual desired outcome. So I made longing bad. I thought that meant longing is bad, but I also know how to do it so well. So I'm like in this vicious circle. And what else did I note here? Longing over things I had no control over. So I'm going to be specific here. For example, I would long over specifics instead of like the essence of something. So I would long over a particular person to like me or love me. Well, I can't control that. But I chose that that's the thing I'm going to long for. That sets you up for a life of misery, let me tell you that. Right?
Well, yeah, if you're like, they have to love you back. They have to love you in a specific way. Yes.
Right. So when we're that specific about what we long for, we're probably like, I'm not saying longing for specifics isn't helpful, but comparing it with, if you long for something really specific where the variables are not in your control, or the majority of variables are not in your control, which is often, I want someone to do something for me, a specific someone to do a specific something in the way that I want it, or I want them to feel a certain way about me. Those are things we have no control over. And those are things that are going to cause, I think, a lot of grief and heartache and just stagnant life force energy when you long for those on a consistent basis. I should
like
get an award
for longing. Yeah. The longevity longing award. That's almost the entire way I classify longing as something that I don't have control over. Because if it's something that I want, then I can cause it to happen, right? It's that element of not having control. And I think the really important piece for me that I intellectually believed for much longer than I embodied the belief is that everything is as it should be. Like I really trust the universe, which gives me this aspect of non-attachment to the outcome that I think is really important. Because that, for me, the longing is attached to the idea that there are elements I can't control, timing, people's behavior, whatever it is. And I want to long for that thing that I can't control, that I want really badly, paired with this trusting the universe that if it's not meant for me, it won't find me. That feels really liberating.
Well, I want to speak about this thing about trusting the universe. Like right now, it rolls off your tongue like it's your truth, right? It's like your framework about life, right? And I want to go back to what you said. Like, this all got to be, like, you can say that I trust in the unfolding, I trust in the universe from a place of rooted, embodied truth and like calm about it, because you learned first how to feel your feet on the ground. And your butt on the chair, and to have a look around the room, right? That was the foundation to be able to come to a place now where you're like, well, I can long for things that are out of my control because I trust the universe. That's, I feel like, is a byproduct of all these practices that you've put into place.
And one of those practices being going out and looking for evidence that I can trust the universe, that I'm supported. And I feel like we've been talking about this. I can't remember if it's here or on live calls, but the act of looking for evidence, you're going to find what you're looking for if you're looking for something, generally speaking. So if you want to learn to trust the universe and the support that the universe has for you, you go out and look for that too. I didn't used to believe that, and I cultivated it and found it to be true.
Yeah. So, yes, longing. So there's like a little nuance here I want to touch on when you said you're longing for some things right now that you have no ultimate control over. For example, let's just say like to have someone put their hand on your back in that way that you saw in an ultimatum, right? Longing for that feeling and that experience. There are some things that I believe that you can do to allow for that to happen, right? If you choose to walk down the street and every time a person you feel attracted to walks by, you cringe or scowl or like look the other way, like the likelihood of you connecting with someone where you get to have that experience where they lovingly put their hand on the small of your back, probably lower, right? So that's the thing I love about longing, because I feel like it's a combination. It's a combination of things that you can't really control, along with things that I can actually practice showing up in the world, embodying a certain energy that makes that more likely to happen. And I guess, some people are going to call that manifesting, right?
Yeah. And this is that generative thing. We were talking about this on a live call, the generative nature of looking for evidence. If you're spending time connecting with desire instead of sadness that you don't have the thing you desire, then you're in that energy of desiring, and that then creates your next step. So maybe you're then feeling more desirous. Maybe you do your hair or get the energy to feel like you want to go wander around town and meet new people. Like it has this generative effect that creates new storylines that you get to live in.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. Let me see. What else did I write here? Oh my goodness. I felt it right when I read the words. Longing to be chosen.
Oh.
Right? And I think there's a really human and like make sense version of longing to be chosen. And then there's a heartbreaking version of longing to be chosen, where you're like, I don't even care who or what chooses me. I just want to be chosen. And that's how we fall into relationships with people who are really misaligned for us, jobs and careers and educations that are really misaligned. So I just wanted to bring that up of noticing your relationship with like longing to be chosen. Are you longing to be chosen by something that ultimately is misaligned, but you're just so desperate to feel that experience of being chosen? That's just human nature, right? That part makes sense. But notice what you're attaching to, hoping they or it will choose you. And perhaps bringing a shift of, I long to be chosen by something or someone that's more aligned for me. And I also long to choose something or someone that's more aligned for me. That's a very different feeling. Yeah. Right. But I remember being really like growing up as a kid, longing to be chosen by my parents, by friends and people in the neighborhood and kids at school. That like I almost didn't care who chose me, just choose me, please, right? And that's coming from a different place that I think we might need to hold some gentleness and do some healing work around. Yeah. I remember working with a client once, and she was working so hard to apply for jobs. And I just got the sense, like on a gut level, I'm like, do you actually even want this job? Like, it really doesn't sound like something, like knowing her, knowing our conversations, I'm like, it doesn't really sound like something that would light her up. And even in the way she spoke about it, energetics, I'm like, I don't really feel you lit up by this. Like this wasn't a longing because it's an alignment. And so I really wanted, I hope they choose me because it would be such a good fit if I landed at that place. And when I asked her, I'm like, can we just check something for a moment? Like, do you actually want that job? Or do you think it's possible that the part that's playing up, like that's really really loud right now, is the part that desperately wants to be chosen, to feel like you're wanted, right? That someone sees value in you. And that was like that was a big moment. And it was so helpful because I think she realized, oh, right. Like, why am I working so hard to try to chase down something I don't actually want? If and when I get that, I'm actually not going to be happy. So if we're going to spend time working, why not work on that deeper seated wounding that just wants to be chosen? We can work on that instead of putting all our energy in chasing and bending and pretzeling ourselves to try to get this job that I don't actually want, or this person or relationship or whatever, right? You can replace job with whatever the thing is that you're wanting desperately to be chosen by.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, it's going to be work either way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I wanted so badly to be chosen by people that were just not good for me.
Yeah.
Bless my little soul.
It's so basic, that notion of, and I think it's such a natural response when we're upset for others to reinforce that, just want to be chosen. I am remembering my last big relationship breakup, which was like a while ago. It was like 7 years ago. And I had broken up with him. And I was sad after. I remember this was a time where I was learning to share my feelings with my mom. And she was learning and is still learning how to be with my big feelings. I was sad afterwards and feeling lonely. And her response to try to make me feel better was like, "Oh, do you think he would take you back?" And in me, I had done enough work at that point to know that being chosen by him was not a gift. And I was like, no.
Being chosen by him was not a gift. Can we do a whole episode on that, a series on that? That being chosen by him would not be a gift.
Not a gift. But her natural response, like, "Oh, you just want to be chosen. Well, how about this
option?"
Yeah. It was a bad relationship. I'm being mean. But yeah, really, really natural. Well, oh, you want something? How about just this crap version of it? Will that do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So getting a little bit clearer on like what we desire and what is the most aligned for you version. Right. I think what we all long for can be very different, and that's cool and great, and as it should be.
And it'll change over time.
Yes.
Very much. Yeah.
Right. And I think also in relationship, I think that's what, like, friendships, relationships, business, working relationships, it's important to keep sharing with each other, keep connecting for yourself to what you long for and how it evolves and changes over time, but being in communication with each other, right? How do I long for my own growth to be in the coming period? What do I long for us to move towards? Right? Because when you don't have those conversations and you're building something with longevity with someone, whether it's a working relationship or an intimate relationship, you can drift, in totally opposite ways, and then realize much later, oh, like, we gotta like bring things back and find each other again. Because we've taken our own roots with longing, which is fine to have your own things you long for, but like there's no coming together. Like we don't even know whether we fit onto what we long for with and from each other anymore. So regular check-ins, I think.
Yeah.
And like how exciting to share what you long for with someone who can be in that with you.
Yeah.
Right? Because like that's what I notice. Like I just get so excited when I'm with people's longing.
You're right.
Like, oh, that's so exciting. I can't wait for how that's going to unfold for you.
Yeah. That feels like one of the most beautiful things about friendship and healthy partnership is excitement for each other about wherever our lives take us and joy that we can celebrate it together.
Yeah.
I actually used to think I just wanted people to do things my way. Like it's just such a 180.
Such a 180. Yes. That feels like another episode on its own. I agree. I just wanted people to agree with me, do things the same way as me. And right now, like just even saying those two things out loud, energetically, I feel like, oh, that's a dud. Like that's a no. Like
Talk about a dead end.
Like dead energy, right? It
Yeah.
feels like dead energy. Like, well, there's no living, vibrant energy in that.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about excitement. So I wanted to touch on this is when we depending on which version of longing we practice connecting to, it can be a source of excitement in our life, or it can be a source of depression, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And so noting for yourself, like, what has longing been a source of in your life? Have you allowed it? If you are familiar with longing being a source of depression, which I get and have lived, then noticing, hey, would I like to create or start creating a different relationship with longing? Would I like to practice the skills that put me in a position where longing could possibly feel exciting? And like you said, I love the word generative in my life.
Yeah. It feels like a switch flicked, and it went from depressed to excited, like literally in an instant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is very exciting. I'm excited.
I love it in an instant because it connects me to two things. I think humans are capable of great things that in an instant we can choose to believe something different. We can choose to allow the body to have a different experience. And also, there was so much work done before this that supported it to be something that's even like more likely to happen in an instant.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of shadow work, an awful lot of hidden beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Wow. Is there anything else on your list? You made a list of...
So juicy. I think it's great to just notice how longing shows up in your life. Like, what is it? A quiet whisper? Is it a loud, really loud roaring voice? Like, how does longing show up for you? Or is it so quiet? Has it been so muted and tucked away that you're like, I got to go digging around for it a little bit because I don't know anymore. So getting familiar with that and not making yourself wrong if longing's been totally shut down and you need to dig it out a little bit. What else do I want to say about that? Move your body in a way that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't want to use embodies, but like, there's a way you move when you long for something or someone.
It's inspire longing. Yeah. Actually, I think part of this realization was cobbled together by you led us through, I don't know, sometime in the last month. The feeling of wonder. And looking up at the sky and looking down at the ground and noticing what different types of wonder are generated. I think that helped a lot also in this.
Yeah. Right. So like always, I always find like moving your body, right, in a way that for you connects you to that sense of longing and desire from that excitable place. What would that look like?
And also noticing what your body does if you're shutting down. Like a lot of this discovery for me came from recognizing and noticing little sensations in my body and realizing what they meant for me.
Yeah, for sure. I had to practice that too, noticing when I was cutting off from something, didn't want to, in my mind, entertain it because my mind is super strong and it catches a lot of things fast and it shuts things down fast. So for me, if my mind has shut it down and distracted me because I don't want to feel longing in the body because it feels scary and yucky and unfamiliar, then I got to practice catching when my mind does that for me and like what the body feeling is, getting to know. I didn't know in the beginning what shutting down felt like in my body. So I had to get familiar with that.
Yeah.
I really want to come back to like being able to long. I'm choosing those words on purpose. I think like being able to long, like in a way that creates more excitement and generative energy in our life means there's a solid sturdiness in present day. Because I think any other kind of longing is just living in fantasy land, right? It's not the same feel energetically.
Yeah, and or so I think it can be blocked by past emotional content. Like I think in the past the urge to cry sadly about longing, shut down longing. There was too much of a backlog of big emotions that I hadn't moved out of my body to make space for.
Yes. So a clean out needs to happen. And what I mean by that is like, you need to grieve. I think that's the thing we haven't talked about is my ability to tap into generative, excitable longing and desire is because I gave myself time and place and created a group of like supportive people where I could really grieve all the things I longed for since I was a little girl and didn't have enough of, didn't get, so that you can move that stagnant, heavy energy out of the system to then, like, once you move that stuff, there's room for wonder about what do I long for at this stage in my life? Who am I today and what excites me? Right? But when we're carrying around years and decades of grief, it's hard to make a space for longing in the way that we're talking about longing.
Totally. Yeah, clearing out old emotional content, and I think also clearing out unhelpful stories. I wouldn't have been able to tap into a clean, pure, pleasant desire for love while carrying the belief that most men are pigs, for example, you know?
That's unfortunate to try to combine those two.
So I discovered.
The long way. We discover a lot of things the long way, but that's okay. You're never going to forget that lesson.
That's right. On the stories that I'm not good enough or that I'm too much or not enough. And like all of that needs to be set aside because it interrupts the simple story of love exists. It jumps in with a bunch of buts and exceptions.
Longing is actually so pure and simple, actually.
Yeah.
Right? Like a child grows up like having no issue connecting to longing at all if they're not conditioned out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Their eyes light up. They get excited. That feeling.
Yeah.
Like, wow, wonder and longing. Where did that go along the way? Let's try to reconnect to that. This reminds me of a client that I've worked with who she said, I have a hard time connecting to longing and desire because for so long, and like this was a really well-meaning mother, said we should just be grateful for what we have. Like, and it should just stop there. Like, why long for things and have desire for things? So there wasn't room and encouragement and a welcoming and to long for things, or not even to long for things, but to like make normal and acceptable the human experience of longing. It's just made wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that there can be a nice balance and a dance to it. Imagine if human beings didn't long and have no desire. Like, what, we just hide under a rock and I don't know. Like, what happens if you have no connection to longing?
We'd die. We'd create nothing and we would stop procreating as well. And that would be the end of it.
Right? So longing the story doesn't have to be that longing is bad and longing means you're ungrateful and that longing only leads to disappointment. Yeah. I am very fueled by longing these days because longing orients me to what's next. Energetically, what's next? What am I beginning to open myself to and open myself up for? What things do I feel I need to practice in order to set myself up to have a higher chance that this thing that I long for could materialize in my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it was easy for me to hide from this or just to whatever, that sounds too active. I was unaware of this. And I think partly it's because there are things that I want. There are things that I'm excited about. And I do those things and I work towards those things. And it just hadn't occurred to me that I'd hidden this corner of desire that involved other people. Like, I remember when I was 14, I met a boy. And it was so we went somewhere skiing. I was with a family friend and skiing and met this boy. And like, it's just off to the races. You know, we like each other. It's amazing. Like, I'm full heart in with this juvenile situation. And then we have to go. And it's like, oh my God. Like, I remember it was like a music video. I mashed against the windshield, pulling away, like, no. And I cried and cried forever. And it's like, well, that's not, I can't function like that. So I guess I'll shut it all down.
Well, that's this. I can't function like that, so I guess I'll shut it all down, right? And that's the extremes that we've been sort of conditioned, taught, I don't know what, to live in. What a shame to lose connection with longing and desire because that heartbreak felt so big and you didn't know how to hold it and you didn't have the people around who knew how to help you hold it and be with that experience. Right. I think that's actually where we start as children, young teens, to disconnect from longing and desire. Is we have, or for some people, that's where it starts. For others, unfortunately, living in such dire circumstances, I don't think there's room for desire and longing to really, But anyways, but like some big heartbreak happens, some big disappointment happens. Yeah. And we don't have the capacity and we don't have the supportive co-regulation to help us navigate that experience. Yeah. And so the autopilot protective response is let me shut down to longing and desire because it's bad and it hurts me.
Totally. And it's such a brutal trajectory as you're growing up and, maybe there's feelings of rejection or not being chosen at home. And then you go off to school and you're not chosen on a sports team. And then suddenly you have puberty and romantic things start happening and your heart gets broken. It's like the perfect storm for dissociation, for me at least.
Yeah, like this reminds me of people, we've met people, we've been people like this where on paper, your life is pretty great, right? People would look at you and be like, they're pretty together and successful and whatever. And they get to this stage in their life, and I've been there too, where you're like, I think the words out of the mouth are like, I hate my life. Maybe that's a bit extreme, but like you just wonder, how the heck did I get here? Yeah. Where I'm a pretty highly functional person, yet I feel a little bit dead inside. Like my soul is dead. Something's like, there's no life force energy in me anymore. I'm very good at functioning and have all these things to show for it, but something feels off. And like some people describe that as the midlife crisis, the quarter life crisis, whatever, that time in your life where it's not computing why we're feeling so horrible in our life when tangibly there's all these reasons that we think we should be grateful and happy about, and we should feel good about our lives. And then people have the realization, oh, all these accomplishments and achievements and life milestones that I've reached have not actually been that connected to my deepest, most aligned longings. They're like what I think I should be doing to please someone else or to fit in or to live the fairy tale life that we are sold to think that it's what I want, right? And we haven't actually been that connected to what is my version of what lights me up, longing, right? And when we start shifting life to be oriented by that as our guidepost, you see people light up again and like come back to life. And so that part is exciting. Yes. And I feel like I've lived it. The deadening chapters and phases and building a new relationship with longing. And, and this is where I want to actually, it makes sense to go to this place. If you've ever done, I think, personal growth work, you're probably familiar with the visual of it or the idea of it, which is the life wheel, right? Like, and I think you and I, we've done some workshops on this. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast really, but it's like this pie chart thing that, divides up different areas of your life. And there will be some pretty similar areas for each human being. And then we'll have specifics of things that matter to us more or less than other people, whatever. But to just go on Google a life wheel, or just sit and jot down the areas of life that matter to you: friendships, relationship, learning, career, finances, whatever, just things that matter to you. And that's not the word I want to use. Like, feel into, like, what do you long for in each of those areas? Like, what are you already grateful for? What's present in those areas in your life? And what do you desire? What do you long for? What feeling do you long for in those areas of your life? I think that is a very illuminating thing to practice.
Definitely. I feel an expanding in my abdomen when you say that, because I know if I sat down and did that, things would surface and then something would happen. And it almost feels like, oh, I don't have time
for all these good things to happen in my life.
Yeah. Like, how to hold that. Well, that's a lot. Like, that energetically feels like a lot. And it's an area of life that I would have just bypassed completely before. And now it's a point of extraordinary power.
Yes, because I think what you're connecting to, and this is like a really like childlike version, like wording to use, but what comes to mind is lots is possible. That's the feeling you're connecting to, right? Like, so much is possible for me if I choose to orient to that area of my life. And that's not a belief I used to carry at all.
Yeah.
But I think that all of this practice, all of this nervous system regulating, all the shadow work, the self-acceptance work has brought me to this place of, wow, lots is possible for me. If I look at that wheel of life and I chose to dedicate some time and energy and openness, heart openness to these areas, lots is possible. And like, for me, I've also had to be really honest with myself about which areas of this pie chart, this wheel of life, I tend to have a pattern to be more open to and like feel more longing in and take more action in, and other areas that I've neglected and pushed to the side and like buried, right? All for good reason. But now it excites me to be like, like, I might not be ready to look at that pie chart piece yet, but I like that it's there, ready and waiting for me when I feel I have readiness and capacity.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about the power of longing?
The power of longing. No, because like hearing you say like the power of longing, right away just go to like, oh, what a pleasant feeling in my body. Like, I feel it. And I know that I didn't always feel that. It wasn't always a pleasant feeling. And so if you do not have a pleasant body feeling when you hear us speak about longing, there's nothing wrong with you. If you desire to have that feeling be accessible to you, there's things you can practice, right? So that that's available to you.
Yay! Oh, okay. Thanks, Gigi Bedeman. Do you have a closing practice?
I'm going to find a way so that we can wiggle together again.
It really does just happen naturally. It's a very wiggle-heavy podcast.
So where that came from is like, move your body in a way when like that sort of connects to like that excitement you would feel after you get that thing you long for. Right? Even just being in this, like, imagine you get that thing.
It's definitely a wiggle.
Definitely a wiggle. Yeah. Definitely a wiggle. Can I add a piece? Maybe you'll move it to the place where it fits better?
Sure. Might just leave it here.
Or maybe you'll leave it here. I don't know. I just remembered something, which is going back to like longing longing to be chosen or longing a certain person, longing a certain specific thing versus the essence. Like I had to learn how to let go of longing for a specific person to love me and want me and love me in a specific way, to connecting to, I long to feel this way in a relationship with someone.
Mm.
And like that made a world of difference. I long to feel this way. I long to be able to engage in this way with someone, right? I long to, when I feel sad, to be met in this way by someone I'm in relationship with. That to me opened up a whole new world. It was so freeing to connect to that longing versus I long for this particular person to choose me and show up this way.
Yeah. They need to say things a certain way, do things a certain way. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, they're saying the things, but I don't feel the thing. And that's because it's a feeling we're looking for.
Yeah. And especially if that person has repeatedly shown you and told you they don't desire to show up for you that way, or they don't have ability to show up or choose you in that way. Right? Like, oh, I had to learn that one the hard, long way.
Right. They said they wanted to, and they did want to, they just can't.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not because they're evil. It's not because I'm not worth it. I just want to feel that feeling.
Yeah. Right. So choose the situations and the people who can give you, co-create with you that feeling experience that you really desire.
Love it. Okay. That's it then, huh? That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for being with us. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We long for you to share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you guys
that's a nice feeling. And tell us who you shared it with.
Yeah, we long for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay.
See you next week.